Imagine ending up in the hospital with uncontrolled diabetes, and with that, a $100,000 bill that could have been prevented with a little well-timed insulin. Our guest today is Dr. John Oberg. That happened to his mother-in-law. As a result, he got pissed, got his doctorate, and helped 49 out of 50 patients who had failed for years get their condition under control in just 12 weeks. How? Not willpower, not keto, tiny changes. One patient could only eat ice cream, so they changed the flavor to less sugar, and their blood sugar dropped. This is what healthcare can look like when someone actually gives a shit. Today we're talking about implementation medicine, groundbreaking AI health tools, and why loneliness might be killing you faster than your blood sugar. Hey folks, this is Brobots, the podcast that talks about AI, technology, and your health and your wellness and how they all combine, sometimes into a big clusterfuck of a mess. And that big clusterfuck is something that I've complained about, you've complained about, we've complained about it here on the show plenty. So there's no shortage of complaints. We can all do that. But when it comes to the mess of what the U.S. healthcare system is, we found somebody who's actually trying to do something about it. We were lucky enough to convince him to hang out with us for a little bit and talk about the work that he is doing and about how a lot of it is built on the backbone of AI and advanced technologies that are helping him scale his business, which in effect means helping more sick people get better faster. So our guest today is Dr. John Oberg from Prasina Health. He is an expert in reversing type 2 diabetes, and so we asked him to start by sharing the story that inspired his mission to take on this incredibly massive challenge. Working with or trying to resolve the problems that many people face with type 2 diabetes is what sort of set you on this path. Tell us more about that. What is it that sparked that curiosity and put you on this road?
Yeah, so I worked with organizations doing change management for a long time and then started a healthcare company in 2014 that was doing something called medical cost sharing, where it's like insurance, but it's not insurance. And so people bear one another's burdens. And we saw lots of people that dealt with, chronic disease, cancer. But it hit home, years later when my wife and I went to visit her mom. And her mom had type 2 diabetes and hadn't checked her blood sugar in a few days. And the blood sugar was so bad that she ended up in the hospital. And it was a totally avoidable hospital visit. And, my guess is the hospital visit cost $100,000. It was paid for by Medicare, so the U.S. taxpayer paid the bill. And you have a $100,000 bill that could have been solved with, a couple shots of insulin well-timed. And I got really angry. And so I went back to get my doctorate, and I told people at USC that I wanted to solve type 2 diabetes, and they told me that was cute, that we've been working on that globally for like 60 years, and we couldn't do it. They didn't say couldn't. They said that's a big challenge. And we took 50 patients, and they were all really sick, A1Cs of 9.6, and so 6.5 is diabetes. And they'd all been uncontrolled for years. And 12 weeks later, we had 49 out of 50 patients in control and kept them controlled for the next 2 years. And these are like low
that's
income.
wildly unusual, right? Statistically, that does not happen.
Yeah, I think if you have more than one comorbidity, you get like 10% control, 50-something% if you have, a single disease state. And we've just been, in our latest study, hasn't been released yet. We just are now collected data for it. We're about to send it off for peer review, but we took 79 patients with an average A1C of 11.06 and dropped them into the sevens in 12 weeks. And we took 30% of those patients off of insulin at 6 months. So we're doing things radically differently, and we're getting radically different results, and the patients love it. Our providers love it, and we're saving the system a ton of money. And so we think we're on the right path.
So what's the mechanism? What's the trick you're using?
How do you do it?
Yeah. I wish it was a thing, right? I wish it was like one thing we could give people and just solve the problem, but it's 1,000 little things. And so we take all of everything that we know about medicine today clinically and all of the devices that are available, and we take everything we know about mental health, primarily looking at anxiety, depression, and stress that are caused by disease states like diabetes. And then we evaluate everything, and we look at severity scores for what's the most important thing to be treating for a patient. And then we measure the patient's readiness for change to find out what they want to change. And then we give them a radically incremental program. Like, how small a change can you make? Like, Can you just get them on the right medicine, taking their medicine at the right time? Can you get them to change their coffee creamer? Like the littlest of
Yeah.
things.
I
We
heard
talk to
you
them all the time.
I heard you talking about this in another interview. The small, because it is like a lot of times you hear, oh, they didn't take their medicine, they don't do the things. But you were giving these great examples about people like literally changing the flavor of ice cream because the person could only eat ice. That was the only way they would get calories was ice cream. And you said, well, let's change
Yeah.
the flavor, and that helped drop their blood sugar.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, but that's what we do. And I had one person who was so excited by their visit with the physician that they wanted to go walk a mile, and we said, "Hey, let's just try to get to the mailbox. Like, let's just make it
Right.
smaller. Like just tone it down." And so, really small changes that people can get their arms around. But then we have to talk to them more regularly. Like, you can't wait 2 weeks or 3 months to talk to the patient again. So we interact with them as often as they need to make sure they keep making these small changes, and they build momentum. They change the inertia, build the momentum, and guess what? It works.
I want to get to some of the technology that you're using
Yeah.
to help with this in a minute, but I also want to start there because I think that is the thing. Whether it's trying to lose weight, trying to get my finances under control, trying to fix whatever is broken, there's that hurdle. There's that degree of being stuck, and I don't know. Are you getting closer to figuring out what that is and how to help people get out of it?
Yeah, we look at lots of things, right? So we look at someone's skill set, and if they don't have the right skill set, we have to give them some form of training. We look at their mindset, like what's their belief system. With type 2 diabetes, health belief systems are really important, but there are other belief systems as well. We look at how they're prioritizing different parts of the problem to see if we can help with that. And then we try to figure out what's the smallest unit of work we can kind of engage with them to make it as easy as possible to have success. But that means that our providers have to be, a lot more than what they were trained to do in school. They have to take on new training, and we train our providers every week. Like they have to go through weekly training with me where we're talking about psychology, we're talking about empathy, we're talking about skills training, we're all these things we have to be good enough at. And then we help our patients re-engage in the system. Like we're not going to try to be nutritionists. There's nutritionists in the system. We can get people back to nutritionists when the time is right, or certified diabetic, education people that have all this great training, but they're frustrated too because patients aren't doing what they're being asked to do. And so we try to tee up all those people for success, nurses hotlines and care coordination teams. We don't try to take the place of any of those people. We just want to have the patient show up ready to do what that next one step is.
So is the mechanism to basically go through and apply kind of a minimum effective dose for a change, and then go through and create homeostasis, and then do another small change and get chain homeostasis again, and eventually get a trend where they're actually doing the right things?
Yeah, I would say homeostasis is probably a little bit of a strong term because sometimes we move before homeostasis is kind of
Yeah.
achieved scientifically. But I mean, let's use metformin as a great example. It's a really safe drug. We use it all the time. But there are people that medicate, that they self-medicate off of the drug because it has some, it can cause diarrhea,
Gut
right?
issues.
And it's
Yep.
really uncomfortable, right? And so, but if they're, we talk people through that. We can't stop the diarrhea. We can get them on metformin extended release instead of regular release. We can have them taking it twice a day instead of once a day, which is a little bit less difficult. So there's things we can do to make it a little bit more palatable for people. But then as soon as they're kind of ready for the next change, we want to make the next change. We might not be all the way to homeostasis necessarily, but we do want to keep them moving, right? Like I think your idea is the right idea.
Yeah, and then from an overall measurement perspective, I'm guessing you guys just have a metabolic panel up front, and then you've got continuous monitors like CGM sitting on them, but maybe another wearable that tracks their activity functions, sleep, all those different pieces, and you try to correlate that data into some type of time series graph chart and create trend sets around that to try to understand what things are happening, and then you can make small incremental changes to strategy if you can move those markers.
All of that. Now, what I would say is that, CGMs are probably one of the most misunderstood devices in our practice for our practice. We prefer to have people using blood sticks for their fingers because it's so much more accurate when you're using insulin in particular.
Yeah.
But CGMs are really great for like the person who wants the data for behavioral reasons. This is one of the big conversations we have between the medical doctors and the behavioral people in our practice. It's like, hey, a CGM may not be clinically indicated for medicine, right? But it's really great because it can give somebody some data about their behavior and make the behavior change so much easier, and therefore has a really big clinical impact medically. And so we have to look at things through kind of some different lenses sometimes. And so the data is really important for some people, and for other people, it's stressful.
Yeah.
So are you tracking that stuff in real time, or is that something that they sort of monitor and report to you?
Well, I mean, first of all, I would say CGM data isn't real-time data in the sense it's interstitial fluid, it's not blood. But no, our patients track it, and then we do, in some cases, monitor the CGM data directly. In most cases, we want them entering that into an app so that they're processing it in their brain so they actually know what's happening versus just having the number reported out and having their brain kind of out of the loop with the
Right, right.
provider. So we try to get them engaged in that, but we try to get them engaged in just a few numbers, right? Because you could measure everything. And that isn't, for most people, helpful. Now, I'm a little weird. I want to track more data. I would say there's people in my
I'm one
family
of
that want to
those.
track lots of data. Yeah, totally. And for those people, what we do is we try to meet everyone where they are. So for people that don't want to track a lot of data, we track a little data. We might collect a lot, but we only pay attention to a little. And then for some people, they want to track everything. Now, by the way, there are also people that want to track too many things. Like there are patients who are like, I have this number, it's out of band. It's like, yeah, but when that one number is out of band, it's okay, unless it's out of band with 6 other things. And so like, it's really, and then what it does is it causes a different type of treatment burden, which is anxiety based on not getting an A+ on your paper,
Which
which
can cause
is,
hormonal problems and stress and everything
yeah,
else
it's
and have
all,
a cascading effect. Yeah.
you got it. Yeah. So we
So,
really try to help people understand, like, when is it not important to track a
yeah.
number? It can be as important as when it's important to track a
Yeah,
number.
because that high signal to noise ratio definitely throws people off. And whether you're a provider or a person looking at it, any extra
You got it.
noise makes it that hard.
Yeah. Yeah, medical practice came to us the other day and said they tracked like 25,000 different things in their panel. And we're like, wow, if you want that, great, but not great for most people.
Well,
Yeah.
and so what you're talking about here is a very individualized approach to healthcare that we do not typically see in a
Hyper
doctor's
individualized.
office. Yeah,
Yeah.
so, I mean,
Yeah, that's right.
typically you're walking in, you're giving a list of symptoms, and you're getting whatever drug the doctor thinks is going to attack most of them.
Well, it's concierge medicine. I mean, there are services like this for multiple different treatment sets that are available, and they're financially inaccessible for the vast majority of people because they're very expensive.
That's right.
So
That's
how do you approach that?
I mean, for us, so in my doctorate, we did all the medicine and all the, the mental health work, but we also ripped apart the entire mechanism for the administrative practice of a medical office and all the financial practices and rebuilt the entire practice so that it could work for the most, I wouldn't say, people who have, who are homeless, for example, are very difficult to treat for our practice right now because insulin's a refrigerated drug. And there's some things we just haven't wrapped our arms around with our practice, but we can treat people in the Medicaid population, which is, relatively speaking, a lower income population. It's a lower reimbursement rate, but we designed all of our clinic to work in that environment and to be successful financially, not just clinically.
So a big part of what we discuss typically is AI. And how AI interacts and works with these different pieces. And AI has lots of different inference functions. And you're talking about tracking a lot of data, trying to organize it, and using multiple different LLMs to try to make these things make sense. I mean, Amazon has 15 different LLMs you can choose from in Bedrock just on, medical devices alone.
Yeah, sure.
And then everybody has their own different pieces. Are you guys using AI in this way to try to actually help people with their information? And are you encouraging people to use AI to ask for help? Or are you discouraging them to ask for AI for help when it comes to treating themselves medically?
Great question. We're giving them AI to help. So we use AI on the back end to help with all of our administration for our providers, of course. Like there are things that are table stakes, like ambient scribing and getting information into and out of medical charts that are online. Like that's all happening, of course, inside of our medical practice. And so, and we're doing more and more and more of that as time goes on. Right now, we're really excited about, we're releasing a co-pilot for our patients that can actually talk to their medical chart and talk to their provider. And it can help the patient learn what questions they should be asking about with their provider, but it also tells providers what to be looking out for. So if something exotic is happening, it can call that out and say, hey, you might need to consider a consult with this other specialist, talk to our medical director. And the medical director's all over that, right? So that we're constantly looking for, like, what are the threads that humans wouldn't normally be able to see because they're not specialists in every area. And then the medical director can then, pull the chart and say, hey, we think we need this specialist involved and here's why. And then we have this really beautiful continuation of care note that we can give to that specialist and say, hey, here's what's relevant to what's going on. Here's what's less relevant, but important for you to understand. We have their entire chart available. If you need to see labs, images, whatever, let us know. We'll get it over to you. And so we do. I was joking with someone the other day. We do crazy stuff. We ingest like all of their medical charts for a patient before they come see us for the first time, and then our providers do this crazy thing. We read the chart before we see the patient.
Shocker.
Just crazy stuff,
Yeah,
right?
wild.
And now we don't have to read all of it. We just read the parts the AI is kind of flagged appropriately,
Yeah.
and it goes in and it characterizes like you must read this, should read this. Probably don't need this. It's archived, but here's the summary of it.
So it kind of gives you a heat map of their actual medical information and says, look here first. That's actually very interesting. That's a great use case. The next kind of question I have along the same area is that Western medicine, typically speaking, or at least when it's in the US, is very much so symptomatic treatment. And we don't tend to spend a lot of time working on actual root cause analysis of why people are actually sick. And a lot of people have turned to naturopaths and naturopathic medicine because naturopaths tend to stay more involved and I guess more frequent with their updates and their approach. Like I see my naturopath and my appointment is an hour, like legitimately an hour. If I go see somebody like one of my old GPs, I might get 12 minutes with them, maybe 15 at the most. Are you plugging a fundamental gap that we have with our existing medical infrastructure today? Is that where you see this problem at? Because I'm guessing the techniques are trainable and you could teach other people how to do this, and we could do this at scale for everybody out there if the medical practice itself would actually change. That require massive changes in insurance providers and how we actually treat medicine and treat people. Do you see yourself as doing this, and what are the prospects for the future given where our medical system is today?
We think we may have found a entirely new school of medicine, inside of the internal medicine kind of, realm. Right now, it's based on chronic metabolic disease, but it really is implementation medicine, and how we implement these things is really important. So we think there's a whole new set of protocols that providers need to learn to do this very specific thing for these very sick people. And we do think it's not taking the place of a primary care shop. It's not taking the place of a specialist. It's not taking, we work next to endocrinologists and cardiologists and pulmonologists. And so, So we think it's, infinitely scalable. We're building technology to be infinitely scalable. We think that's true. And we spend a lot of time with patients, really. I mean, our first visit could be an hour if it needs to be. Patients don't generally need to spend that long with us. They don't feel like they want to, but we put that much time aside inside of our practice. And again, we talk to them regularly. Like if they get, their AI and they're interacting with their chart, and they're like, I have a question for one of your providers. The AI can say, well, do you want to schedule an appointment, or do you just want somebody to call you between appointments? And a lot of times, like, hey, can you just give me a quick call? And it's not having to go through the front desk. And it's like the provider just calls and says, hey, what's going on? I saw you were talking about, whatever you're talking about, and here's what I think needs to happen next. Cool. If they need a new prescription, it's like, great, I'll send it over to the pharmacy. No big deal. Everything else is good. Cool. Need to make a change of plan? No? Okay, cool. And then sometimes we change the plan. Sometimes we don't change the plan.
Yeah, it sounds like you're meeting patients where they're at, which is great because a lot of patients have a lot of nervousness about talking to doctors. I mean, white coat syndrome is a real thing. Like I have it. I go in and I see my doctor. My blood pressure spikes every single time. I'm suddenly, in the 130s over 90s, and they're like, you should be on blood pressure medication. I'm like, you put me on it 3 times and I've crashed. Like, you're going to kill me if we try to do this again. Because I'm normal.
It just take off the white coat and I'm cool. Seriously.
Yeah, that's kind of it. And I mean, being able to have a conversation with something that's not human, I guess, or maybe something that you're not worried about being judged by, I think is huge.
Yeah. There's some science behind that, and it works well in some circumstances, but we've got to be careful too. Like the human interaction is really where it's at for us. All of our providers are on a first name basis with our patients. People, I often get Dr. Oberg. It's like, man, if you see me in the hospital or in my classroom, that's cool. But if you're a patient or a friend or a colleague like John, like that's just a much better way that we're going to interact together. And there's some early evidence that like for some parts of cognitive behavioral therapy, that people are interacting with it and getting better results than talking to a human. So I think that we're going to find that there are some, places where anonymity makes a ton of sense. But I want to be super cautious about that because, I mean, with all the hallucination and things, the AI's got limitations as well, and we're bought in.
It's batshit crazy at times.
Yeah,
there's no doubt.
So we don't We have some ways of putting expert systems along
Mhm.
AI so that we can actually make sure we don't have hallucinations
Yep.
in any kind of environment. And then we have the obviously human in the loop systems that work, really closely with the patients. And so we're very careful when we have fully autonomous systems. We would never use a fully autonomous system where something's going to, have anything clinical at all. Like that just would not be appropriate for
But
us.
it plugs that gap of being able to have that constant contact. Like if I'm somebody that's having an
Mhm.
anxiety problem and I can't get a hold of my doctor, my physician, and I can talk to a
Or if
robot
they
and
say, "Hey, I
kind
read
of
this
feel
article
better.
online."
Yeah.
Like, I read this thing
Yeah.
online.
Vet
Like,
this
is
out
this
for me.
true? It's like,
Right.
and then we have guardrails in our system. We're like, yeah, no, that's not actually true.
Yep.
And it's popular science. And it's unfortunate because, and for us, we have this kind of gradient for people. It's like, here's what the science knows for sure. Here's what the evidence is telling doctors to do and they do in the practice. Here's stuff that we just don't know. It's probably not going to hurt you, but like, if you want to give it a shot, just be informed that we don't think it works. Maybe it works. Try it on, see if it fits. Maybe it's placebo, maybe it's great. And then there's stuff that does harm.
Yeah.
And so as long as we're telling patients like they're getting full like information about where all of that is, and then patients need to be agents and make their own choices based on what the science says.
Enabling people to actually make their own decisions. That's an interesting concept.
Patient agency is huge for us. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because we're taught very young to not do that. Like your doctor said to do this. This is the thing that you have to do. Like, get X amount servings of dairy a day, get X amount servings of meat, and there's just some people that
Oh my
don't do
gosh.
right with that.
Have you read Fiat Food? Oh boy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go read the book Fiat Food. It was startling. It was scary. It was, the food pyramid is not a thing for anyone listening. It's just not a thing. Whole food, we talk, eat more whole food, move to the right, meaning from the left-hand side, processed food, right-hand side, whole food, move to the right. And then for exercise, move more. Like we can talk about optimization, and there are experts in optimization, which I would say that our practice is not an expert in like peak performance
Mhm.
optimization of like physical. Like we can get into that science. We know it pretty well, but like the vast majority of humans just need to get up and move.
Yeah. Well, and it's tricky too. I mean, with the risk of getting political here, but I mean, even the idea of eating whole food, right? If you stick to the outer rim of the grocery store, it sure looks like whole food, but it was not raised that way for the most part. So, I mean, it's very
You just got to be
hard.
careful. Yeah, you
Yeah,
got to be
exactly.
careful. You got to read the labels and know what
Yeah.
know. And we actually read labels with patients. That ice cream story was
Right.
us
Yeah.
reading labels with patients, right? So we'll read labels with them, and so
I am.
AI's made meal planning easier. It's great.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you about your take on mental health because so many people are using AI for a mental health surrogate, whether it's in place of an actual therapist or in conjunction with. I do it myself, very guarded and very carefully. And there's a lot of things that used to be thought spirals in my head that would spin there and keep me stuck that I can now go to that judgment-free zone, dump them out, and get some organization to my thoughts and start to come up with an action plan. So for me, it's been wildly beneficial.
Yeah.
For other people, it's been deadly. So I'm curious your take on it and where you see the future of mental health with regard to AI.
Yeah, I'm pretty cautious here. I think, my first coaching experience ever in my life, I was getting coached by a kind of a coach early in their career, and they took me into kind of the therapy zone and did some pretty therapeutic damage that it was undone by a doctor later on who had the right credentials and the right therapeutic background. And so I think here's a great analogy. When I'm using AI, which I use every single day, I'm exceptional at using it in my domain of expertise. It really speeds me up. But I don't code software. And so I work with our chief technology officer who does that. And when I watch him use AI for coding, it's like a different language. Like he can use AI in his domain of expertise and get sped up, 10 to 100 times.
Yeah,
I
I don't
can
write
use
code anymore. I
a,
use AI to do all of
yeah,
it. It's amazing.
yeah. But I think if you're working in your domain of expertise, you can be exceptional at it. If you're not in your domain of expertise, it can turn into an echo chamber and lead to disastrous results. So if someone's interested in using AI for mental health and they're trying to understand like how do I engage with my professional? How do I engage with people that are in a future looking environment? I think those things are less dangerous. I think taking AI into a therapeutic environment where the AI hasn't been built for that specifically has a lot of danger to it, and I would recommend not doing that. Like I think Look, I think talking to an AI and not versus not talking to anybody, like I think, gosh, I believe we can lower the cost of mental health care by 90 or 95% using AI. Here's the way I think we should do it. I think we should train people to be peer counselors to engage in subclinical settings and then have an AI listen in with the AI flagging a therapist when a therapist needs to get involved. That's the way that we see it working inside of our practice is like, let's get people comfortable enough with the AI listening in as a peer to the peer counselor and the peer counselor who's trained in handling subclinical issues. And then when you get into something that's therapeutically indicated, let's bring an expert in. That'll let the expert kind of get a much broader scope of what people they can help, right? And they can really be involved in work at the top of their license. And we can get people, peer counselors, modeling empathy again, like great listening. And so I think a great place for this is in the retired population, who's often marginalized and kind of de-emphasized in our society, and all that wisdom gets put on the sideline. Like I think is a mistake. I just think we can draw that entire population back into society and grab all their wisdom, and a lot of our mental health challenges probably go the right direction.
Well, and it's weird because I think a lot of us used to have friends and we used to go to bars and hang out and chat, and
Yeah.
we don't really do that. Like I mean, I can go back like to the early 2000s and be like, yeah, okay, I used to meet people at the bar, we'd hang out, we'd chit chat, we'd socialize, and it happened much more frequently. And I just feel like people are much more insulated and much more insular and much more protected in kind of what they say, and they don't tend to have real deep conversations. They tend to be very superficial. And I think we've drifted into that kind of as a society because we've created these Facebook monikers where everything's looked, watched, monitored, and we're looked at all the time. And I full disclosure, I own a medical startup. I take wearable data from Dexcoms and Fitbits and Garmin's and put those things into time series chart graphs and overlay them with other data sets to make sense of it. And then we were way ahead of the market when we put it out there, so it's not gone anywhere. 1,000 other companies have come in since and made changes. That being said, we collect too much data, and even in our platform, and it can be used in interesting ways. And we have all kinds of safeguards that lock those pieces down. And we have a sharing system, and it requires multi-factor authentication. And you have limited access with your key tokens to be able to get to things. How do you get people over this fear? Like, you're using AI, you're using biometric data, you're collecting all this information, you're pulling it back in. Actually, the real question is, do your patients even worry about it, or are they in the state where they're like, I got to do something? Or is it that, this is another signal that creates another layer of anxiety that you have to worry about in your practice?
Yeah, we don't think the technology is going to solve the problem, right?
Yeah.
Like we just don't believe that. So we talk about AI and how all the ways, and we use it a lot. Like we're very, very technology forward, but not with our patients. Like our patients, what they would tell you is it's the relationship between the provider and the patient. It's about the patient getting agency over their own journey.
Yeah.
Like these are the things that we really lean into, and that and when people ask, like you guys did, what's the thing? It is messy, muddy work.
Yeah.
Like we are up to our elbows in the emotional mud with our patients every day, and they love it. And so that's, people crave relationship. And so, I think is the 50s or the 60s, there was some study done that I can't find. I went back and looked for it, but my recollection was like men could talk to like 12 other men about anything. And then a more recent study was like less than 3.
Yeah.
And I heard somewhere recently less. I can't find those studies, by the way. I keep looking for the numbers, but I think heuristically it's on point. I mean, you've had the Surgeon General say that loneliness is the most, deadly epidemic of our time.
Yep.
I would tend to believe that. Like we need to solve this. And so one of the things that we do is we really connect with people. I know it's a crazy idea, but
I heard you tell a story of a colleague who came to you and said, "How do you convince the patient that you care about them?" And you said, "You actually care about them.
You care about them."
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so many of us think that nobody gives a shit. And one, it's probably not true. I mean, there probably are people that do, but we don't know how to handle those signals, and we don't know how to take empathy and friendship because we're not used to it. Like, I really think that's the case. I look at my kids and how they interact and behave, and it's a whole different level, and they're way more open and honest than I've ever been. But as a Gen Xer, like, we're just taught to swallow so much and not say anything. And yeah.
part of that's sociological. Like there's a thing that happens every 25 years. We go through different cycles, and
Mhm.
there's a 100-year cycle we go through. And the way I had heard it described to me early in my life was that they said that bad times make strong people, make good times, make weak people, make right.
Yeah.
So it's the hard times. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
so you go through this cycle, and so I and and then we have people that are, the kids grow up, right? It takes until you're 25, 26, 27 years old till your brain's fully formed, depending on lots of
I'm
factors.
still
And
waiting
so,
for it to happen.
well, and empathy is a practice skill, right? Like you have to, like I didn't make really good lifelong friends until I was in my early 30s after I started going to that therapist I told you about.
Yeah.
And that wasn't because my parents did anything wrong. I had a something happened. My dad died when I was really young, and it had an impact on me that no one really helped me through. And had I, not for lack of trying, I just never really processed it until I got into my early 30s. And once I did, I was able to make lifelong friends. And now I've got, lifelong friends that feel like family. But I'm really fortunate. But it was a very deliberate process for me. Like I went out in my early 30s, like, I don't have this. I want this.
Yeah.
And you can't just walk out to somebody like, hey, man, best friends. Like, that's weird.
Right.
Right. So you've got to learn about the layers of friendship and how that develops over time, and how,
See, and I'm kind of the opposite way, where like I hate small talk and I hate the ramping up to the real connection. So I want to be the guy that just goes up to the randos like, hey, can we just be friends? Like, can we skip all the, like, how's the weather? What are you doing this weekend stuff? Like,
yeah, that doesn't hold up, right?
Right.
I've tried that before, and I've had those relationships that get super intense, super fast with male friendships, and it's like, but they, it doesn't generally last, and
yeah,
so.
Exactly. Well, cool. So
Yeah.
I was going to ask you something along the lines of, what are some ways that people can use technology to, to better their lives? But it sounds like you guys are doing a lot of the technology on the back end. So I'll open it to you. Like, for the listener who's out there who read the description that had something to do with like dealing with health issues and how technology can help them, what are some things that people can take away from what you see every day that are simple places to change that ice cream or whatever it is that they need to do to get on the right path?
Yeah, I did a TED Talk, and when I did the TED Talk, I was really thinking, like, what in 12 minutes, what do I want people to know? And I'll try and get down into a minute. Like, I want people to get involved with an expert so that they're making the plan with the expert, right? So, because the expert has to say, yes, this is a good plan, and the person has to say, yes, I'll do that plan. Right. But if a person comes in and is like, I'm going to kick diabetes, I'm going to cut out sugar. I'm only going to eat like, Captain Crunch. And it's like, hold on, time out. Like, that's sugar too. Like that, okay, I won't eat Captain Crunch. I'll just eat rice. Well, hold on. Like, we got to get like, so there has to be an expert. And there has to be a person who says, here's what I'm willing to do. And they've got to put that expert plan together. And usually it starts with getting people on the right medicine so that medicine is tolerable. And then it's move at least 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, in at least 10-minute chunks, and constant movement. You don't have to break a sweat. Just get out and walk, right? And then eat more whole food, like just a little more. We tell people, if you're going to the steakhouse, get the steak. Like, that's fine. But make the right choice when you're not at the steakhouse, right? Like, get the thing that's more whole food, and just do a little more each day. Like, wherever you are, just do a little better.
Yeah.
Constant, persistent, consistent refinement.
That's it. Just a little better each day. A little better.
Awesome. This has been great. John, Dr. Oberg, whichever you prefer. Thank you so much for your time.
John.
Anything important that we did not get to that you want to make sure we mention?
Yeah, for me, I'd say, our life's work is at Pristina Health, which is the medical practice, but we try to tell these stories of hope at our little podcast called talesofabundance.com, where we talk about things like AI and, the stress of economics. But it's hopefully mostly stories of hope, like stories of redemption. And so if you want to come check out and just feel good for a minute, come check out talesofabundance.com. And just reach out if you want to be part of the movement in whatever way you want to be part of it. Reach out and let us know how you want to join.
We're definitely going to come check that out, because our mantra is to try to be positive and put positive spins on things. And we often wind up saying during all of our AI chats. So I think we might listen in for some advice.
Exactly. Cool.
I'm pretty hopeful.
Links to all of the above in the show notes for this episode. John, Dr. Oberg, thanks so much for your time. Really good conversation. Appreciate your time.
Let's do it again.
Let's do it again.
Thank you.
All right, that again is Dr. John Oberg. Our thanks again to him for being on the show with us here today. You can find all of the links and necessary resources that we talked about in that conversation at our website. That is brobots.me. That's also where you will find us again in about a week with another new episode. Hit subscribe if you have not. Leave a rating and or a review if you would. And, of course, share this with anybody who might be struggling with these same issues in the same way you are to help them get the results they need. Thanks so much for listening. We will see you again in about a week at brobots.me.
We know this podcast is amazing and it doesn't seem to lack anything, but we need a legal disclaimer. Prior to implementing anything discussed in this podcast, it is your responsibility to conduct your own research and consult your physician. You should assume that these knuckleheads don't know what they're talking about, and they're not liable for any physical or emotional issues that occur directly or indirectly from listening to this podcast.
Marketing is hard. But I'll tell you a little secret. It doesn't have to be. Let me point something out. You're listening to a podcast right now, and it's great. You love the host. You seek it out and download it. You listen to it while driving, working out, cooking, even going to the bathroom. Podcasts are a pretty close companion. And this is a podcast ad. Did I get your attention? You can reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a pre-produced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience in their favorite podcasts with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com, that's Libsyn, ads.com today.